It is time for dinner, and we are reading the book of Amos. The words of Amos, who was among the herdsmen of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah, sovereign of Yehudah, and in the days of Jeroboam, son of Joash, sovereign of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. And he said, Jehovah roars from Sion and gives forth his voice from Jerusalem. And the pastures of the shepherds shall mourn, and the top of Carmel shall wither. Thus said Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Damascus, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they threshed Gilad with threshing implements of iron. But I shall send fire upon the house of Hazael, and it shall consume the palaces of Ben-Hadad. And I shall break the bar of Damascus, and cut off the inhabitant from the valley of Aven, and the one who holds the scepter from Beth-Aden, and the people of Aram shall go exiled to Kir, said Jehovah. Thus said Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Uzzah, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they took into exile an entire exile to surrender it to Edom. But I shall send fire upon the wall of Uzzah, and it shall consume its palaces. And I shall cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod, and the one who holds the scepter from Ashkelon. And I shall turn my hand against Ekron, and the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, said the Master Jehovah. Thus said Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Sor, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they surrendered an entire exile to Edom, and did not remember the brotherly covenant. But I shall send fire upon the wall of Sor, and it shall consume its palaces. Thus said Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because he pursues his brother with the sword, and casts off all compassion, and his displeasure tore incessantly, and he kept his wrath forever. But I shall send fire upon Taman, and it shall consume the palaces of Batra. Thus said Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they ripped open the pregnant woman in Gilad to enlarge their border. So I shall kindle a fire upon the wall of Rabbah, and it shall consume its palaces, with a shout in the day of battle, with a storm in the day of the whirlwind. And their sovereign shall go into exile, he and his heads together, said Jehovah. Thus said Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Moab, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because he burned the bones of the sovereign of Edom to lime. But I shall send fire upon Moab, and shall consume the palaces of Kerioth, and Moab shall die amid uproar, with a cry and with a voice of a shofar. And I shall cut off the judge from its midst, and kill all its heads with him, said Jehovah. Thus said Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Yehudah, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they have rejected the Torah of Jehovah, and did not guard his laws, and their lies after which their fathers walked led them astray. But I shall send fire upon Yehudah, and it shall consume the palaces of Jerusalem. Thus said Jehovah, for 3 transgressions of Israel, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they sell the righteous for silver, and the poor for a pair of sandals, who crush the head of the poor ones in the dust of the earth, and turn aside the way of the meek. And a man and his father go in to the same girl to defile my set-apart name. And they lie down by every slaughter place on garments taken in pledge, and in the house of their mighty one they drank the wine of those who have been fined. Yet I destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was as strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above, and his roots from beneath. And I brought you up from the land of Mizraim, and led you 40 years through the wilderness to possess the land of the Amorite. And I raised up some of your sons as prophets, and some of your young men as Nazirites. Not so, O you children of Israel, declares Jehovah. But you made the Nazirite drink wine, and commanded the prophet, saying, Do not prophesy. See, I am weighed down by you, as a wagon is weighed down when filled with sheaves. And a place to flee shall perish from the swift, and the strong not fortify his power, and the mighty not save his life. And he who handles the bow not stand, and the swift of foot not save, nor he who rides a horse save his life. And the one potent of his heart among the mighty flee naked in that day, declares Jehovah. Hear this word that Jehovah has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the entire clan which I brought up from the land of Mizraim, saying, You alone have I known of all the clans of the earth. Therefore I punish you for all your crookednesses. Would two walk together without having met? Does a lion roar in the forest when he has no prey? Does a young lion give forth his voice out of his den unless he is caught? Does a bird fall into a snare on the earth where there is no trap for it? Does a snare spring up from the earth if it has not captured prey? If a shofar is blown in a city, do the people not tremble? If there is calamity in a city, shall not Jehovah have done it? For the Master Jehovah does no matter unless he reveals a secret to his servants the prophets. A lion has roared, who is not afraid. The Master Jehovah has spoken, who would not prophesy. Cry out at the palaces of Ashdod, and at the palaces in the land of Mizraim, and say, Gather on the mountains of Shomeron, and see the many unrests in her midst, and the oppressed ones within her. But they do not know to do what is right, declares Jehovah, these who store up plunder and loot in their palaces. Therefore thus said the Master Jehovah, an enemy even all around the land, and you shall bring down your strength from you, and your palaces shall be plundered. Thus said Jehovah, as a shepherd rescues from the mouth of a lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear, so are the children of Israel who dwell in Shomeron to be rescued, in the corner of a bed and on the edge of a couch. Hear the witness against the house of Yaakov, declares the Master Jehovah, the Elohim of hosts. For in the day I visit Yisrael for their transgressions, I shall also punish concerning the slaughter places of Bethel, and the horns of the slaughter place shall be broken, and they shall fall to the ground. And I shall strike the winter house along with the summer house, and the houses of ivory shall perish, and the great houses shall be swept away, declares Jehovah. Hear this word, you cows of Bashan, who are on the mountain of Shomeron, who are oppressing the poor, who are crushing the needy, who are saying to their masters, Bring wine, let us drink. The Master Jehovah has sworn by his set apartness, See, days are coming upon you, when he shall take you away with hooks, and your descendants with fishhooks, and let you go out at the breaches, each woman before her, and you shall be cast out toward Harmon, declares Jehovah. Come to Bethel, and transgress to Gilgal. Increase transgression, and bring your slaughterings every morning, your tithe every 3 days, and burn an offering of thanksgiving with leaven. Proclaim voluntary offerings loudly. For you have loved this, you children of Israel, declares the Master Jehovah. And I also gave you cleanness of teeth in all your cities, and lack of bread in all your places. But you did not turn back to me, declares Jehovah. And I also withheld rain from you 3 new moons before the harvest. Then I would send rain on one city, and on another city I would not send rain. One part was rained upon, and where it did not rain, the part would dry up. Then 2 or 3 cities would wander to another city to drink water, but they were not satisfied. But you did not turn back to me, declares Jehovah. I have stricken you with blight and with mildew. The creeping locust devoured your many gardens, and your vineyards, and your fig trees, and your olive trees, but you did not turn back to me, declares Jehovah. And I have sent among you a plague in the way of Mizraim. I have killed your young men with a sword, along with your captured horses. And I have made a stench of your camps come up in your nostrils, but you did not turn back to me, declares Jehovah. I have overthrown some of you, as Elohim overthrew Sodom and Amorah, and you were like a burning stick plucked from the burning, but you did not turn back to me, declares Jehovah. Therefore I am going to do this, O Yisrael. And because I do this to you, prepare to meet your Elohim, O Yisrael. For look, he who forms mountains and creates the wind, and who declares to man what his thought is, and makes the morning darkness, and who treads the high places of the earth, Yehovah, Elohim of hosts, is his name. Hear the word which I take up against you, this lamentation, O house of Yisrael. The maiden of Yisrael has fallen, not to rise again. She lies forsaken on her land, with no one to lift her up. For thus said the Master Jehovah, the city that goes out by 1,000 has 100 left, and that which goes out by 100 has 10 left to the house of Yisrael. For thus said Jehovah to the house of Yisrael, seek me and live. But do not seek Bethel, nor enter Gilgal, nor pass over to Beersheba. For Gilgal shall certainly go into exile, and Bethel becomes a non-entity. Seek Jehovah and live, lest he break out like fire upon the house of Yosef, and shall consume it, with no one to quench it in Bethel. O you who are turning right ruling to wormwood, and have cast down righteousness to the earth, he who made Kemah and Kasil, and who turns the shadow of death into morning, and darkened day into night, who is calling for the waters of the sea, and pours them out on the face of the earth, Jehovah is his name. Who is flashing forth destruction upon the strong, so that destruction comes upon the stronghold. They hated the one who reproves in the gate, and they despise the one who speaks the truth. Therefore, because you trample on the poor and take grain taxes from him, you've built houses of hewn stone, but you are not going to dwell in them. You've planted pleasant vineyards, but do not drink wine from them. For I know your transgressions are many, and your sins are great, afflicting the righteous and accepting bribes, and turning aside the poor at the gate. Therefore, the wise keep silent at the time, for it is an evil time. Seek good and not evil, so that you live. And let Jehovah Elohim of hosts be with you, as you have spoken. Hate evil and love good, and set up right ruling at the gate. It might be that Jehovah Elohim of hosts shows favor to the remnant of Yosef. Therefore, Jehovah Elohim of hosts, Jehovah said this is wailing in all open squares, and in all the streets they say, Alas, alas, and shall call the farmer to mourning, and skilled lamenters to wailing. And in all vineyards there is wailing, for I pass through your midst, said Jehovah. Woe to you who are longing for the day of Jehovah. What does the day of Jehovah mean to you? It is darkness and not light, as when a man flees from a lion, and a bear shall meet him, or entered his house, rested his hand on the wall, and as a serpent shall bite him. Is not the day of Jehovah darkness and not light? Is it not very dark with no brightness in it? I have despised your festivals, and I am not pleased with your assemblies. Though you offer me ascending offerings and your grain offerings, I do not accept them, nor do I look on your fattened peace offerings. Take away from me the noise of your songs, for I do not hear the sound of your stringed instruments. And let right ruling roll on like water, and righteousness like a mighty stream. You brought me slaughterings and meal offerings in the wilderness for 40 years, O house of Israel. But you took up Sekuth, your sovereign, and Kiyun, your idols, your austral mighty ones, which you made for yourselves. Therefore I shall send you into exile beyond Damasek, said Jehovah, Elohim of hosts, his name. Woe to those at ease in Sion, and those trusting in Mount Shomeron, the distinguished ones among the chief of the nations, to whom the house of Israel comes. Pass over to Calneh and see, and from there go to Hamath the great, then go down to Gath of the Philistines. Are you better than these reigns, or is their border greater than your border? You who are putting off the day of evil, yet bring near the seat of violence, who are lying on beds of ivory, and are stretched out on your couches, and are eating lambs from the flock, and calves from the midst of the stall, who are singing to the sound of the harp, having composed songs for themselves like David, who are drinking wine from bowls, and anoint with the finest ointments, yet they have not been pained over the breach of Yosef. Therefore they shall now go into exile with the first of the exiles, and the feasting of the stretched out ones shall cease. The Master Jehovah has sworn by himself. Jehovah Elohim of hosts declares, I am loathing the pride of Yaakov, and I have hated his palaces. Therefore I shall deliver up the city and all that is in it. And it shall be that if 10 men remain in one house, they shall die. And if an uncle or his undertaker brings the remains out of the house, he shall say to one inside the house, Is anyone with you? And he says, No. Then he shall say, Hush, for we have not remembered the name of Jehovah. For look, Jehovah is commanding, and he shall strike the great house with breaches, and the little house with clefts. Do horses run on a rock? Does one plow it with oxen? For you have turned right ruling into poison, and the fruit of righteousness into wormwood. You who are rejoicing over a matter of naught, who say, Have we not taken horns for ourselves by our own strength? For look, I am raising up a nation against you, O house of Israel, declares Jehovah, Elohim of hosts, and they shall oppress you from the entrance of Hamath to the Wadi Arabah. This is what the Master Jehovah showed me, and see, he was forming locust swarms at the beginning of the late crop. And see, it was the late crop after the mowings of the sovereign. And it came to be when they had finished eating the grass of the land, that I said, O Master Jehovah, forgive, I pray. How does Yaakov survive, for he is small? Jehovah relented concerning this. It shall not be, said Jehovah. This is what the Master Jehovah showed me, and see, the Master Jehovah was calling to contend by fire, and it consumed the great deep, and did consume the portion. And I said, O Master Jehovah, please stop. How does Yaakov survive, for he is small? Jehovah relented concerning this. This shall not be either, said the Master Jehovah. This is what he showed me, and see, Jehovah stood on a wall made with plumb line, with a plumb line in his hand. And Jehovah said to me, Amos, what do you see? And I said, a plumb line. And Jehovah said, see, I am setting a plumb line in the midst of my people, Yisrael. No longer do I pardon them. And the high places of Yitzhak shall be laid waste, and the set-apart places of Yisrael shall be destroyed. And I shall rise with the sword against the house of Jeroboam. Then Amaziah the priest of Bethel sent to Jeroboam, sovereign of Israel, saying, Amos has conspired against you in the midst of the house of Israel. The land is not able to endure all his words. For this is what Amos said, Jeroboam shall die by the sword, and Israel certainly be exiled from their own land. And Amaziah said to Amos, go, you seer, flee to the land of Yehudah and eat bread and prophesy there. And do not prophesy any more at Bethel, for it is the sovereign set-apart place, and it is the house of the rain. And Amos answered and said to Amaziah, I am not a prophet, nor am I a son of a prophet, for I am a herdsman and a grower of sycamore figs. But Jehovah took me from behind the flock, and Jehovah said to me, go prophesy to my people Yisrael. And now hear the word of Jehovah. You are saying, do not prophesy against Yisrael, and do not drop words against the house of Yitzhak. Therefore thus said Jehovah, your wife shall become a whore in the city, and your sons and daughters shall fall by the sword, and your land be divided by a measuring line, and you die in a defiled land, and Yisrael shall certainly be exiled from its land. This is what the Master Jehovah showed me, and see, a basket of summer fruit. And he said, Amos, what do you see? And I said, a basket of summer fruit. And Jehovah said to me, the end has come upon my people Yisrael, no longer do I pardon them. And the songs of the Hechal shall be wailing in that day, declares the Master Jehovah. Many dead bodies everywhere, thrown into any place. Hush. Hear this, you who are swallowing up the needy, and do away with the poor of the land, saying, when does the new moon pass, so that we sell grain, and the Sabbath, so that we trade our wheat, to make the ephah small and the shekel large, and to falsify the scales of deceit, to buy the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of sandals, and sell the chaff of the wheat. Jehovah was sworn by the excellency of Yaakov, I shall never forget any of their works. Shall the land not tremble for this, and everyone mourn who dwells in it? And all of it shall swell like the river Heave, and subside like the river of Mizraim. And it shall be in that day, declares the Master Jehovah, that I shall cause the sun to go down at noon, and shall darken the earth on a day of brightness, and shall turn your festivals into mourning, and all your songs into lamentations, and bring sackcloth on all loins, and baldness on every head, and shall make it like mourning for an only son, and its end like a day of bitterness. See, days are coming, declares the Master Jehovah, that I shall send a hunger in the land, not a hunger for bread, nor a thirst for water, but for hearing the words of Jehovah. And they shall wander from sea to sea, and from north to east they shall diligently search, seeking the word of Jehovah, but they shall not find it. In that day the beautiful maidens and strong young men shall faint from thirst. Those swearing by the guilt of Shomeron, who say, as your mighty one lives, O Dan, and as the way of Beersheba lives, and they shall fall and never rise again. I saw Jehovah standing by the slaughter place, and he said, strike the column head, so that the thresholds shake, and break them off by the head, all of them. and the last of them I kill with the sword. Not one of them fleeing gets away, and not one fugitive of them escapes. If they dig into Sheol, from there my hand does take them. And if they climb up to the heavens, from there I bring them down. And if they hide themselves on top of Carmel, from there I shall search and take them. And if they hide from before my eyes at the bottom of the sea, from there I shall command the serpent, and it shall bite them. And if they go into captivity before their enemies, from there I shall command the sword, and it shall kill them. And I shall set my eyes on them for evil and not for good. And the Master Jehovah of hosts is he who touches the earth so that it melts, and all who dwell in it mourn, and all of it come up like a river, and subside like a river of Mizraim. Who is building his upper room in the heavens, and has founded his firmament on the earth? Who is calling for the waters of the sea, and pours them out on the face of the earth? Jehovah is his name. Are you not like the people of Cush to me, O children of Israel? Declares Jehovah. Did I not bring up Israel from the land of Mizraim, and the Philistines from Caphtor, and Aram from Kir? Look, the eyes of the Master Jehovah are on this sinful reign, and I shall destroy it from the face of the earth, except that I do not completely destroy the house of Yaakov, declares Jehovah. For look, I am commanding, and I shall sift the house of Israel among all the nations, as one sifts with a sieve, yet not a grain falls to the ground. All the sinners of my people are going to die by the sword. Those who are saying evil does not overtake us nor meet us. In that day I shall raise up the booth of David, which has fallen down, and I shall repair its breaches, and raise up its ruins, and I shall build it as in the days of old, so that they possess the remnant of Edom, and all the nations on whom my name is called, declares Jehovah, who does this. Look, the days are coming, declares Jehovah, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him who sows seed, and the mountains shall drip new wine, and all the hills melt. And I shall turn back the captivity of my people Israel, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. And they shall plant vineyards and drink wine from them, and shall make gardens and eat their fruit. And I shall plant them on their own soil, and not uproot them any more from their own soil I have given them, said Jehovah your Elohim.